Welcome to the deep dive. Today, our mission is, we're figuring out why massive, ambitious goals almost always fail.
And they really do. A lot.
Right. And we're going to uncover the solution by exploring a 40-year evolution in management theory. Our guides for this are two June 2026 white papers by Dr. Alan Barnard.
Yes, specifically the full and short versions of his work, which is titled From One Goal to Identifying Everyone's One Thing, the One Plan Method.
Because, honestly, look, if you look at the research in these papers, the statistics are just terrifying.
Oh, absolutely.
When organizations launch major change initiatives, they have a miserable success rate of just like 20 to 40%. And that number really hasn't improved in decades.
It's a staggering failure rate, especially when you factor in the billions of dollars and millions of hours poured into these initiatives globally.
Yeah, the waste is unbelievable.
Right. And if you are listening to this right now, chances are you've been on the receiving end of one of those corporate mandates that just, that evaporates into thin air.
Leaving nothing but busy work behind.
Exactly. So today is really a masterclass in why that happens, and more importantly, how to fix it through alignment, deep focus, and a completely different approach to overcoming the psychological resistance to change.
You know, usually when we talk about setting a goal, there's this expectation of simple physics, like throwing a dart. You see the bullseye, you aim, you throw, and it lands right where you wanted it to.
If only it were that simple.
Right. But then you step into the world of large-scale change, and suddenly the air is as thick as molasses and the dartboard is moving. Okay, let's unpack this.
Let's do it.
Because Dr. Barnard's research points out that these goals don't fail because people aren't trying hard enough. They fail because there is a total breakdown in translation between the boardroom, where some executive says, grow revenue by 50%, and the frontline workers who actually have to make that happen on a Tuesday morning.
Yeah, that translation failure is the root of the entire problem. And to understand the modern solution to this, what Dr. Barnard calls the one plan method, we really have to rewind to a specific puzzle from December 1985.
Okay, take me back.
It was a puzzle solved by Dr. Eliyahu M. Goldratt, the creator of the theory of constraints.
I know the theory of constraints is like a massive cornerstone of this entire methodology, but before we get to 1985, can we quickly define what that theory actually is for someone who maybe hasn't encountered it?
Yeah, simply put, the theory of constraints says that any system is limited from achieving its goal by a very small number of constraints.
Okay.
So think of a physical manufacturing plant. If machine B is the slowest machine in the whole factory, the bottleneck, then making machine A run twice as fast doesn't give you more finished products.
Because machine B can't keep up.
Exactly. It just gives you a massive pile of unfinished inventory sitting right in front of machine B. Improving anything other than the bottleneck is basically an illusion.
So it's about finding the one weakest link.
Correct. Now, back in 1985, Goldratt noticed this bizarre pattern with his theory. He and his team would analyze a business, find the bottleneck, and come up with these brilliant paradigm-shifting solutions.
What he called second-degree solutions, right?
Right. These were ideas that didn't just compromise on a problem. They challenged a hidden assumption, so the problem simply vanished.
Wow.
But when they presented these brilliant ideas to managers who hadn't been in the room during the brainstorming, they hit a brick wall. Fierce, total resistance.
And it wasn't because the managers were stubborn or incompetent, right? Because the white papers make it really clear they were reacting logically to just bad communication.
They were reacting to receiving half a puzzle. Goldratt realized the innovators were making a fundamental communication error. They were either communicating the strategy, the objective, without sharing the tactic, which is how to actually achieve it.
I see.
Or they were communicating the tactic, the new rules or processes, without explaining the strategy, the ultimate purpose.
So the people receiving the new plan unconsciously judged the new tactic against their old strategy, or vice versa.
Exactly. Of course they rejected it. It didn't make any sense to them.
Because they were speaking two totally different languages. Goldratt realized this happened because the business world had completely mangled the definitions of two critical words, strategy and tactic.
Yes, he completely redefined them.
Right. He said strategy isn't high-level corporate executive stuff. Strategy simply answers the question, what for? It is the objective. And tactic isn't just low-level frontline grunt work. Tactic simply answers the question, how? It is the specific action.
And those two things cannot be separated.
Right. The way it clicked for me reading this was thinking about a double helix of DNA. You cannot have one strand without the other. They are structurally bound together.
Oh, that's a great way to think about it.
Yeah, for every, why are we doing this at the executive level, there must be a, how are we doing this attached to it? And that pairing spirals down to every single employee in the organization. Strategy and tactics exist as pairs at every single floor.
That is a brilliant visualization. You cannot have an action without a purpose, and you cannot have an objective without an action to achieve it.
Makes total sense.
So from this insight, Goldratt developed the strategy and tactic tree, the S&T tree. And the most revolutionary part of this tree was that it forced you to make your assumptions completely explicit.
The sources mention necessary, viability, and sufficiency assumptions. Walk me through how those actually work in practice.
Okay, let's use a real-world example. Imagine your team's objective is migrating to a new customer database.
Standard corporate headache, sure.
Right. The necessary assumption is why we are even bothering to do this at all. Let's say we are losing data with the old system.
Okay, got it.
Then the viability assumption explains why the specific new cloud software will actually work. It might be because it has built-in autosave redundancy.
Makes sense.
And finally, the sufficiency assumption asks, is buying this software enough? The answer is usually no. To be sufficient, we also need a tactic for, say, running training workshops.
I see. So by making these assumptions visible on paper, you change the entire dynamic of a meeting.
Exactly.
Like if an employee disagrees with the database migration, they aren't attacking their boss personally. They are just pointing at a piece of paper and challenging the sufficiency assumption, saying, hey, the software is great, but we don't have enough training hours to make it work.
It creates an environment where you can challenge the logic without challenging the person.
Which sounds incredibly healthy and productive. But that raises a massive question for me.
What's that?
Well, if this S&T tree was so brilliant back in the 80s, and it solved this huge communication gap, why didn't every single company on Earth start using it? Why did the failure rate of change initiatives stay so stubbornly high?
Because the 1980s version of the tree became a bottleneck in itself.
Oh, that's the irony.
Right. It was brilliantly logical, but it was incredibly rigorous. It was full of dense academic jargon, and mapping out a full corporate tree required weeks of dedicated work by a highly trained theory of constraints expert.
Wow, weeks of work.
Yeah, and a tool that only experts can use will only be used where you happen to have an expert.
Which means it wasn't scalable at all. So if companies couldn't do it in 1985, how does a modern manager have time to do it now? That is the exact problem Dr. Alan Barnard spent the last 2 decades trying to solve, right?
Okay.
Leading to the creation of the one-plan method.
Yes. Dr. Barnard realized you had to keep the rigorous logic of Goldratt's tree, but strip out all the jargon so any manager could actually use it on a Tuesday morning.
So how did he simplify it?
He turned it into a standardized structure. Usually, it's a 3-level tree with 13 boxes or a 4-level tree with 31 boxes. Every single change initiative is represented by a box.
Okay.
And instead of dense academic logic, every box just has to answer 5 plain language questions.
The 5 questions. This is the absolute engine of this method. Let's walk through them because they're just so practical.
Sure. First is when maken, which establishes the need. Why is this change needed right now?
Right. And second is what for, the strategy.
Right.
What is the specific, measurable objective? And the paper notes it has to include a performance metric right there in the strategy.
Exactly. Third is WHY, establishing viability. Why is this objective difficult but genuinely possible to achieve?
What?
Fourth is how WTO, the tactic. How specifically will we implement this change? And just like the strategy, this needs a metric, but a compliance metric. Did we actually do the thing we said we would do?
And finally, the 5th question, the sufficiency check. Why each, why not? Why is this tactic not yet detailed enough to ensure 100% compliance? But wait, I have to stop here.
Yeah.
I'm really stuck on that 5th question. Asking my team why not just feels like I'm giving them a free pass to complain. Like, if I give them a plan, why would I proactively invite their excuses?
It's completely understandable to see it that way, but you have to view it through the lens of psychological safety. The why not question is a diagnostic tool. Yeah. If you hand down a plan and someone says, we can't do this because IT won't give us server access, that isn't an excuse. That is a systemic constraint that you, as the manager, need to solve.
Oh, I see.
If you don't ask why not, your team will just quietly fail and commit one of 4 massive execution mistakes.
What are the 4 mistakes?
First, doing the wrong things and wasting capacity. Second, failing to do the high-leverage right things because they lack resources.
Right.
Third, doing the right things the wrong way, usually through bad multitasking. And fourth, repeating those mistakes because the culture doesn't treat changes as safe-to-fail experiments. Asking why not surfaces the roadblock before the failure actually happens. Whatever the roadblock is, that tells you what your next tactical substep needs to be.
So you only stop asking why not and adding detail to the plan when you can look at it and say compliance is now 100% assured.
Exactly.
That completely flips my perspective on it.
Okay.
We have the architecture of the plan.
Yeah.
But how do we actually fill those 13 or 31 boxes? Because translating a massive goal like grow revenue by 50% in 12 months down to local departments usually just creates absolute chaos.
It really does.
Right. Operations launches a cost-cutting program, sales demands a bigger travel budget, and HR forces everyone into day-long synergy workshops. Everyone is busy, but nothing is synchronized.
To prevent that chaos, Barnard introduces a strict cascade sequence. It starts with one mandatory question every single department must ask themselves when a new corporate goal is announced.
And what's the question?
Do we currently have the capacity and capability to meet the new demand this goal places on us?
And if the answer is no, then their one goal is crystal clear. Their goal is more. They have to do more work until they can meet the demand.
Right.
And the analogy this horse has used to explain this sequence is brilliant. Think of your specific department as a physical chain. When your goal is more, you are dealing with a chain strength problem. If you want a chain to hold more weight, you don't polish every link. You don't even fix the second weakest link. You strictly focus on the absolute weakest link.
But what if a department runs that analysis and realizes they do have the capacity? Then they move down the cascade. If they don't need more, they ask, can we do it faster? If no, their goal is faster, and they focus on the longest link in their process.
If they are fast enough, they ask, can we do it better? That's a quality issue, so they focus on the faultiest link. Then comes cheaper, where you attack the costliest link.
And finally, simpler. Simplification isn't about improving a link, it's about identifying links and loops that are completely unnecessary and removing them entirely to reduce the invisible cost of complexity.
Wow.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this sequence, more, faster, better, cheaper, simpler, is what forces an entire massive company into alignment.
Right, because operations might be focused on more capacity, while finance is focused on cheaper processes, and IT is focused on simpler systems. They're all working on different things, but they're all synchronized to support the exact same 50% revenue growth.
Exactly. It completely eliminates the chaos.
I have to push back here, though. Doesn't telling a team they can only focus on one goal at a time slow a company down?
Not at all.
Well, if you're a fast-moving tech startup, you probably want more output and cheaper costs simultaneously. Why artificially limit your team?
Because pursuing multiple goals simultaneously divides your most precious and scarce resource management attention. It leads to what Goldratt called bad multitasking.
Meaning?
When you divide attention across 3 major improvement goals, you guarantee that everything progresses a tiny bit, but nothing ever actually crosses the finish line.
Because everyone is constantly context switching.
Exactly. Finding the one binding constraint and putting all your energy there acts as an incredible speed multiplier. A team that focuses solely on more, achieves it in 2 months, and then pivots entirely to faster will drastically outpace the team that tries to balance all 5 things for a whole year.
Okay, so I know my department's goal is, say, more, and I know my constraint is the weakest link. But how do I actually go about fixing that weak link without breaking something else?
Right, that's the tricky part.
The sources mention the old movie City Slickers, where the cowboy Curly holds up his finger and says the secret to life is just one thing.
Yeah.
But he leaves the guy hanging on how to figure out what that thing is. Luckily, Dr. Barnard gives us the map.
He does. He created the 6-step one-thing focusing cycle. It's a highly repeatable routine.
Walk me through it.
Step 1 is define the one goal like more or faster. Step 2 is identify the one constraint, the weakest or longest link. Step 3 is define the one problem, using the 80-20 rule to find the single issue causing most of the pain. Step 4 is resolve the one conflict. Step 5 is find the one innovation to break the assumption behind that conflict. And step 6 is run one experiment to test it safely.
Here's where it gets really interesting. I read the case studies on this cycle in the white paper, and the results are just wild. But I really want to understand the mechanisms behind them.
Sure.
For example, Microsoft used this exact cycle on their global supply chain. They had a massive, persistent conflict between making products to stock versus making them to order. Walk me through how they actually broke that.
It's a classic supply chain conflict. Making products to stock means you always have inventory ready for customers, but you risk holding millions in unsold goods if demand drops.
Right.
Making them to order means you have zero wasted inventory, but your customers might wait weeks for delivery and you lose sales. Microsoft was stuck between these two extremes.
So what was the one innovation?
The innovation they found through the 6-step cycle was dynamic buffer management.
How does that work?
Instead of relying on static, highly inaccurate 6-month sales forecasts, they shifted to using real-time consumption data.
Oh, wow.
They ran an experiment using a digital twin, a computer simulation of their actual supply chain to prove it was safe. By dynamically adjusting their inventory based on what was actually selling that week, they broke the conflict.
And the results?
They dropped inventory by $250 million in the first year, and simultaneously boosted sales by over $100 million because they rarely stocked out of the right products.
That is just incredible. And it isn't just for massive tech companies. The UN World Food Program used it too.
Yes, that's a brilliant example.
They needed 10% more food aid, but they had absolutely zero new funding. Their goal was more, and their constraint was cash trapped in regional reserves. Explain the fear mechanism there, because that fascinated me.
The UN regional directors were hoarding their budgets, and it wasn't out of greed, it was out of fear. If a sudden crisis hit their region, a famine or a natural disaster, they knew the head office in Rome was often too slow to approve emergency funds. So the regional directors hoarded cash to protect their local population.
Makes total sense from their perspective.
Exactly. The conflict was between head office needing that cash for global emergencies and local offices needing it for local security.
So how did the innovation break that fear?
They introduced a save it and share it policy. If a regional director managed their budget efficiently and freed up cash, the new policy let them keep a guaranteed percentage of it for their own local discretionary use, while the rest went back to global.
Wow.
It completely shifted the incentive. It removed the fear of losing everything. By breaking that behavioral conflict, the UN World Food Program hit their 10% target without a single new dollar of funding.
The psychology there is so elegant.
Ah,
And I love that the sources apply the same logic to an individual too. They use the example of individual health span. If your overarching system goal is to live 100 plus years of healthy, active life, you look at your body. What is the weakest link? If your muscle strength is the factor most likely to fail first and cause a cascading decline, then your goal for your body is more.
right.
You apply the 6 steps, which point you directly to progressive resistance training to break that specific biological constraint.
The logic applies universally because constraints are a universal law of systems.
But practically speaking, identifying all these constraints, mapping out the behavioral conflicts, and drafting a 31-box S&T tree across a global enterprise sounds like a 6-month administrative nightmare.
It used to be.
Right. If managers didn't have time for it in 1985, they definitely don't have time for it now. How does this actually get done today?
That is where the 2026 integration comes in. For decades, the bottleneck to using this system was having a theory of constraints expert in the room. Now, Dr. Barnard's team has integrated large language models into software called Harmony Achieve to act as that expert.
So the AI builds the tree.
Basically, yes. The human manager provides 3 simple inputs. W, who you are, what your goal is, and W, why it's challenging.
That's it?
That's it. In under 2 minutes, the AI drafts the entire 13-box or 31-box one plan. It maps out the strategies, the tactics, the metrics, and sequences them based on the cascade rules. But there is a vital catch.
There always is.
When the AI generates those boxes, every single one of them is tagged with an amber badge that says not validated.
Which I love because it's such a great observation on the role of technology.
Mm.
The AI isn't replacing the human manager. It is doing all the tedious clerical work of drafting the architecture, so the human is forced to do the only thing that actually matters, use their judgment to validate the assumptions.
Precisely. The software literally will not let you move to the execution phase until a human turns that badge green.
Because a plan is only as good as the assumptions it is built upon.
And even with AI, eventually, reality is going to disagree with your beautiful plan. The Harmony software runs on a continuous loop. Design, validate, plan, execute, and audit. During execution, one of your metrics is going to turn red. You either didn't do the tactic or the tactic didn't produce the result.
Well, in most companies, a red metric means someone is getting fired or the project gets quietly swept under the rug.
Exactly. But in this method, a red metric is just data. It tells you that one of your validated assumptions was wrong. To figure out which one, you use a specific mechanism called the pro-con cloud.
I saw that term in the papers. How does the pre-can cloud actually work when you hit a roadblock?
It maps out the psychology of a disagreement. When a metric is red, it's usually because someone is resisting the tactic. The pro-con cloud forces you to explicitly write down 4 things. What is the positive of changing? What is the negative of changing? What is the positive of the status quo? And what is the negative of the status quo?
Oh, that's clever.
By mapping this out, you realize the person resisting isn't trying to sabotage the project. They're just trying to protect the positive of the status quo or avoid the negative of changing.
So it surfaces the hidden conflict.
Yes.
And once you see it, you can design a win-win innovation that protects their needs while still achieving the goal.
Yeah.
And the output of that pro-con cloud drops directly back into your one plan as a newly updated change box.
Exactly.
The plan is never actually finished. It's a living theory of how your business operates, updating one disproven assumption at a time.
It transforms a static corporate mandate into a dynamic, continuous learning system.
We have covered a massive amount of ground today. We started with the harsh reality that most ambitious goals fail due to translation breakdowns between strategy and tactics. We saw how Goldratt's 1985 insight evolved into explicit S&T trees, and how Dr. Barnard simplified that into the 5-question one-plan method.
Right.
We learned to cascade goals through more, faster, better, cheaper, and simpler by finding the weakest link in the chain. And we explored how AI drafting at the pro-con cloud turned failure into a continuous loop of learning. So what does this all mean for you?
That's the real question.
If you are listening to this and you are staring down a massive project at work or a huge personal goal, take a step back. Do you actually know your one thing? And do you know the one specific constraint standing in its way? Or are you just trying to improve everything all at once and hoping for the best?
This raises an important question, and it's a thought drawn straight from the source text regarding inertia.
Let's hear it.
We spent a lot of time today talking about overcoming resistance to change. If you find yourself or your team hesitating on a new goal, the text suggests it is very rarely out of ignorance.
Meaning they understand it, but they're still pushing back.
Right. You aren't resisting because you don't understand the benefits of the new goal. Instead, resistance is usually an exaggerated fear of losing the pros of the status quo.
Wow.
So the provocative thought I want to leave you with is this. The biggest bottleneck to your next massive leap forward might simply be your own comfort with how things are right now. Are you protecting your status quo at the expense of your potential?
Wow. Protecting the status quo at the expense of your potential. That is definitely something to chew on. Next time you're headed a massive new initiative, don't just throw a dart at a moving, murky dartboard. Look for the weakest link, map out your assumptions, and clear the air. Thanks for diving deep with us, and we'll catch you on the next one.